More bodies are piling up at Strickfield High as it becomes clear someone or something that's taking the lives of kids enrolled in summer school. Could it be an angry ghost seeking vengeance, or a juvenile delinquent who's gone too far? Find out in the third part of Prom Night of the Dead.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, and we have a very, very exciting and very chilling third part to our mini-series, Prom Night of the Dead. All the violence, intrigue, and sex you've come to expect from a good old Strickfield tale. But before we get to that, I just want to say thank you all so much for tuning into the program. Right now is what we call the off-season. Right now is when the diehards are listening, and that's you. You love scary stories every single week of the year, and not just around Halloween or in the winter. No. Your thirst for the macabre simply cannot be quenched. And I love that about you. So make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app. And if you want to support us in a direct way, but not spend a penny, go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher and leave us a 5-star rating. We have 202 ratings on Spotify and 163 on Apple Podcasts. The more, the better. That's what helps us bring in brand new spookies every week, and especially when Halloween comes around. And if you want to support us in a very direct way that costs you very little, you can go to WeeklySpooky.com, and for as little as $1 a month, you get a bonus episode and all kinds of little extras on top of my truly undying, or maybe undead, gratitude. But now, my dears, it's time for the third part of this terrifying tome known as Prom Night of the Dead. Oh yes, things are heating up at Strickfield High, and not just because the weather is warm. So get comfortable. It's about time to head to class. But first, a very quick word from our lovely sponsors. Previously on Prom Night of the Dead, months earlier, the prom at Strickfield High School truly became a night to remember, when Laura Lee Hardy murdered many fellow students, including Lillian Johansson, the frontrunner for the prom queen crown. 2 months later, several students are taking summer school, and things get stirred up when Ronnie Brunswick arrives and creates tension. She also lets it be known that Lillian's body disappeared from the hospital morgue not long after her murder. At the Feltner County Fair, Regal Fairlane meets up with her summer school teacher for a forbidden love affair, and the ghost of Lillian Johansson greets the lovers. Regal and Austin escape, only for Regal to later find her dead lover as part of a scene in the haunted house. During Ronnie's time in summer school, Principal Van Diest refuses to expel her. She reveals a knowledge of many dark secrets involving her fellow students, dark enough to have her possibly rack up a body count. Does she have a connection to Lillian Johansson's ghost? After more victims, Ronnie contacts Primrose Mirren. When Primrose enters her home for safety, she is seized by a mysterious assailant. Did Ronnie finally come for Primrose, looking to show her the error of her ways? And now, Prom Night of the Dead, Part 3, by Rob Fields. Week 5, Friday night. Primrose Mirren screamed at the top of her lungs as the knife suddenly came down. Fast. Remembering that Samuel Wormton was killed by Lillian Johansson's ghost, she grabbed her assailant's wrist. She groaned and fought back with fear-fueled strength and finally freed herself. When Primrose got to her feet, her attacker pursued her. Primrose screamed again as she ran through her house. The knife almost came down on her hand as she used it to push off of a lamp table. She saw there was only one place she could run. The locked, fancy French patio doors leading out to the backyard. She knew she had to save herself, and it was better to do what she had in mind now and catch hell from her parents later. Primrose cried out for her life as she crashed right through the doors. She could feel the cuts on her arms and legs as she reached the fence on the other side of the in-ground swimming pool. She climbed the fence and ran until she reached the main gate, where she opened the side door and escaped. Final week, Monday morning. On Saturday morning, Primrose certainly did catch hell from her parents for the damage they saw in the house upon coming home. After she explained what had happened, they eased off her. They knew their daughter well enough to know she wouldn't lie to them about someone attacking her. Her parents called the police, resulting in Primrose answering several questions. When she told the police what had happened in the alley next to the Strickfield Centennial Theater, omitting the details about Lillian Johansson, they told her they would investigate it. When the police left, Primrose was taken to Strickfield General Hospital and was treated for her injuries, mostly scratches and minor cuts. After coming back home, Primrose cleaned up and stayed home for the rest of the weekend. She hadn't gotten much sleep, which showed when she returned to Strickfield High School on Monday. As soon as Primrose walked into room 12, she immediately caught the menacing look from Ronnie Brunswick. Primrose gulped when she remembered her attacker was definitely female, in spite of being completely covered in all black. Now she wondered if it had been Ronnie. But Ronnie wouldn't have covered up like that, would she? She was always so direct and never backed down from anybody, especially Principal Van Diest. Primrose took her seat and choked when she saw Samuel Wormton's empty seat, knowing she would never see him again, except, possibly, at his funeral. Okay, she was paying him to write her papers. As far as she was concerned, it was her money, to do with as she liked, and she knew everybody else, including the principal himself, had done something discreet in their time. Sure, she was guilty of cheating. She was guilty of a lot of things. But who wasn't? This was going to be a very, very long 3 hours. At the break, Primrose saw Ronnie march right into the library and point right at her as she was looking at the yearbook. Primrose became scared and ran from the library. She didn't get very far when Ronnie yanked on her strawberry blonde hair and shoved her into an empty classroom. Ronnie pulled the door shut behind her, then pressed herself up against her prey. "You afraid of me, little Primrose? You should be, you fucking cheater." Primrose tried to compose herself. "Okay, I'm a cheater, but you are a drug dealer. And a whore." Ronnie smirked. "And it was people like you who put me there. Funny thing, it's also people like you who find people like me when you need uppers for ballet recitals. Then you needed Adderall to win Miss Strickfield at the county fair last year. Then you was wanting coke to win the election for student council president next year." "What do you want?" Primrose asked weakly. "What you owe for everything I hooked you up with. I gave them to you on credit 'cause you're a Mirren, which means you were good for it. But you've been avoiding me, rich girl. What, you can pay your nerdy lover for doing your homework, but you can't pay me?" They stared into each other's eyes for a long moment. Then Primrose nodded. "Yeah, I can pay you. What do I owe you?" Ronnie smiled sweetly now. 10. Primrose's eyes and mouth widened. 10 grand? For the drugs? 3 grand for the drugs I gave you so far, and $1,000 for every week of summer school for keeping my mouth shut about you cheating, including this week. You pay up, your secret stays safe. And if not..." Ronnie took out her smartphone and showed Primrose the footage she captured of her and Samuel making their exchange in the alley next to the Centennial Theater from that fateful night. And I got a few more of these just like it. Primrose started to cry a little now. Then she nodded. Okay. When Primrose opened her purse and pulled out her money, Ronnie snatched it and counted it out. Wow, $4,000? I'm surprised you carry that kind of money on you. Then she smiled. I'll call this an installment. Always a pleasure doing business with you, little Primrose. So I just owe you another $5,000 then? Primrose inquired. Ronnie laughed. Nah, you still owe me $6,000, due on Friday. Primrose gasped. What's the extra $1,000 for? Ronnie quickly placed a pharmaceutical container in her hand. For these. You really look like shit. She held Primrose's hand tightly. You don't pay me the final $6,000. She showed Primrose her switchblade. I'll cut a slash on your arm for every day you miss a payment, as a reminder. You get real delinquent, I'll just cut your fucking heart out, and then I'll post every video I got of you on social media. You hearing me, rich girl? She retracted the blade. Now get the fuck out of my face. Ronnie stepped aside and let Primrose leave. She knew she had time to get a few lines of cocaine in before going back to class. She didn't really need it, but she was feeling really sweet at the moment with all that cash in her pocket, and knowing much more was coming. She could certainly treat herself today. When the next break came, Ronnie targeted Regal Fairlane and followed her to see her going into an empty classroom. As Regal pulled the door shut, Ronnie suddenly came into the room with her. What's the matter, Preppy? Still missing your sexy teacher boyfriend? Ronnie asked, pulling the door shut behind her. What? Regal choked out. Ronnie smiled. Yeah, I know all about you fucking Mr. Zachary. In fact, Ronnie had her smartphone and showed Regal the footage she captured of them meeting at the Strickfield County Fair, the night Austin was killed. Regal became dizzy when she saw some of the rather NSFW content from inside the haunted house. Ronnie knew everything. She stopped the video. You wasn't fucking him for grades, so what's up with you? Regal groaned. No, it wasn't for grades. I like older men. I'm not going into my sex life with you. Ronnie sighed, romantically. Nice. You got a fetish. We all got 'em. But that ain't all I want to talk to you about, Preppy. You owe me green for those quality caffeine pills you wanted around midterms and finals week during the regular school year. I let you pay me with a night of hot sex after midterms because we were both in the mood, so I ain't counting that, but you still owe me for finals week. How much? Regal asked. $500 for the pills. Ronnie smirked her evil smirk. And $1,000 for each of these 6 weeks of summer school that I didn't post this video to social media. So you owe me $6,500 altogether. I don't have that kind of money, Regal shrieked. I can pay you for the pills, but the rest, that's extortion. She put her hands to her head in frustration. Why, Ronnie? What the hell did I ever do to you? Ronnie smirked again. How about when you stole Daddy's money to buy ecstasy from me when you wanted to fuck on it with your teacher back on your birthday? Yeah, looky here. I got that one on my phone too. Extra steamy. And when Daddy cornered you about the missing green, you told him I broke in and lifted it, didn't you? The popo couldn't hang it on me, but I knew you fucked me. Only fair I fuck you back. Ronnie showed Regal her switchblade and gave her the same threats she made to Primrose Mirren one break earlier. Then she finished by asking Regal, Now, you got the green to give me today? Regal felt sick to her stomach from seeing Ronnie's videos of her and Austin, but she immediately paid Ronnie the money for the drugs. After that, Ronnie opened the door for Regal and let her walk out. From there, the two girls walked back to class. Final week, Tuesday. After school, Primrose met up with Regal in the old, abandoned rail yard on the outskirts of the village. Primrose had seen Regal and Ronnie walking back into the classroom together the day before. Having a pretty good idea of what had transpired between them, she contacted Regal and arranged a meeting. The girls confided in each other about why they were in trouble with Ronnie. "I can't afford to pay $6,000, Regal told Primrose. "Now I'll have to stay out in the open so Ronnie won't catch me alone somewhere. I can't even go into a restroom anywhere, knowing Ronnie will corner me for her blackmail money." "I know what you mean," Primrose replied. "I can pay her for sure, but I'm not going to. The money for the drugs was enough. I won't pay for blackmail." "At least you didn't have to pay her with sex," Regal muttered. "I'm not into girls, especially skanky ones like Ronnie Brunswick." "You could have fooled me, Regal. You know damn well you loved it," a familiar voice interrupted. "You even wanted some hot morning sex." Regal and Primrose gasped when they saw Ronnie approaching them. She still had her eyes locked on Regal. "Okay, I ain't no good girl, but I take great care of my body. Men pay big money for a hot piece of ass like me." Ronnie brought out 2 switchblades and sprang them to life. "You two ain't paying up? That's fine. Like I said, I'm taking both your fucking hearts." She opened her eyes wide. "Hey, I can be the new Queen of Hearts killer, right here in Strickfield." "Run, Regal!" Primrose screamed. The 2 girls turned and ran. They heard Ronnie laughing maniacally behind them. Ronnie hadn't done any cocaine today, but she sure could act like she had. Contrary to what people thought, Ronnie knew her limits on drugs and never overindulged. In fact, she only ever did cocaine as her drug of choice. Okay, maybe also some pot. She never did any of the other drugs she sold. She got off on fear more than anything else, and these girls were just priceless. Regal and Primrose were quite surprised at how fast Ronnie could run and keep up with them, even in her stiletto heels. Ronnie managed to chase her targets onto Indian Hollow Road. At one point, both girls split up. Ronnie continued pursuing Regal. After several minutes, Regal reached a wooden fence and climbed over it into a field. Regal ran onto the soft, freshly plowed soil and found it harder and harder to run. Seeing this, Ronnie took her time climbing over the fence. Then she seemingly just walked until she caught up to her prey. Regal cried out when Ronnie shoved her and made her fall onto her back. Then Ronnie sat on her and smirked. "Now, Preppy, I want another look at that sizzling body of yours before I cut your heart out." Ronnie purred, cutting off the top button on Regal's blouse. "That's what you get for trying to fuck me over." Regal began to cry now. "Please, no." "Stop!" a voice called out. Ronnie looked up and saw the guy running towards them. When he got close enough, Ronnie recognized him immediately. "You?" Ronnie never fought Derek Masters when he cautiously took her switchblades. She even let him help her get off of Regal and back onto her feet. Then he took Regal's hand and helped her up too. "Oh, thank God. Thank you so much, Derek," Regal cried. "Please, help me." Derek nodded. "I got this. Go on home, Regal." Regal nodded quickly and made her way back to the fence. After climbing back over it, she soon disappeared. Derek turned to his girlfriend. "Why are you like this, Ronnie? What happened to you?" As always, he was so unbelievably calm. Ronnie had never felt so vulnerable in her entire life. She really didn't know how to fight Derek, and she had brawled with many guys in her life. Somehow, this guy she had met day 1 in summer school had stolen her heart. He truly cared about her in spite of the fact that she was trouble. Now he had made her see how dark her soul truly was, and she began to cry. Derek and Ronnie held each other long enough for her to cry out her pent-up rage from the years of hell she endured to harden her the way she was. And then Derek lifted her teary eyes to his and kissed her tenderly. Ronnie completely submitted to him and kissed him back. When they finished, Derek took her hand and walked her to the farmhouse where he lived with his family. As many times as Derek had been to Ronnie's apartment at Strickfield Cove, She hadn't been able to seduce him to her bed, and she took care of her apartment the same way she took care of her body. But now, she had the feeling they would finally be going to bed real soon. Primrose kept running until she came back to Strickfield High School. She hoped she could get inside the building and lose Ronnie. She had never been so scared of any one individual in all her life. Okay, two. She still remembered Lillian Johansson's ghost from in the alley next to the Strickfield Centennial Theater 4 days earlier. Primrose found one of the back doors open and went into the school. It was the middle of the afternoon, so only a select few faculty members would likely be inside, or maybe a custodian. She came out into the hallway and thought about running into the gymnasium to hide from Ronnie there. She pulled on both sets of doors to find they were quite locked. "Can I help you, dear?" a voice called out. Primrose looked and saw the drama instructor, Devin Decker, approaching her. "I'm sorry, the gymnasium's closed until the end of the week." "Someone's chasing me," Primrose quickly told her. "Who's chasing you?" Devin asked suspiciously. "She's going to kill me!" Devin eased Primrose into her arms. "Nobody's going to kill you here, dear." Primrose quickly tore away from Devin. "How can you say that?" Then she laughed and spun around with her arms outstretched. "People died here! At the prom from hell!" Devin sighed. "Come with me. You need to get yourself together." Devin escorted Primrose to the little theater and had her sit in one of the seats. After she had finished crying, she looked up at her savior. "Thank you, Miss Decker," Primrose whispered. "It's quite all right, dear," Devin replied. Then Primrose recognized Devin a little more. "I do know you. You were close to Lillian Johansson." "I'm close to a lot of people," Devin replied. Primrose shook her head. "I've seen you with Lillian lots of times when she was alive. I walked by your house and saw you getting her ready for prom." "It was Lillian's first prom. She trusted me to make her look as beautiful and lovely as possible. I'm quite certain she was her class's choice to win the junior crown. Had she won it, she would have automatically been nominated for the senior class crown at next year's prom." She sighed. It's still upsetting what Laura Lee Hardy had done on prom night. Because of her, no prom queens were ever crowned. "I'm so sorry," Primrose said sadly. "Me too." Devin patted Primrose's shoulder. "Come on, dear. I'll take you home." Primrose brightened up. "Really? Don't you have work to do here?" "I do, but tomorrow's another day, and I'm nearly finished anyway." From there, Ms. Decker and Primrose left the little theater. Derek held Ronnie after they finished making love. Ronnie still found herself crying at times. She confided in Derek about how her parents had abandoned her when they felt she was old enough to get on by herself, at the age of 10. From there, she had to become street smart to be able to live. "My parents are both from money, Derek," Ronnie finished. "They abandoned me 'cause they ain't never wanted no kid. That's why I say rich people put me where I am." She sighed. "I fucking hate my life." Derek caressed the side of her face. "Maybe I can help. Why don't you come and work here?" Ronnie looked up at him. "What?" "My dad's always looking for people to come work on the farm here," Derek explained. "That's why I'm still here. Dad'll give you room and board and you'll be paid good. You can even learn about farming while you're out there. It'll be kinda like going to college." Ronnie pondered it. I don't know." He looked her in the face. "Then ask yourself if you want to keep doing what you're doing for the rest of your life." Ronnie quickly turned her back to him. "I've killed people, Derek. I ain't cold-blooded, but I've killed people. If it was either me or the motherfucker wanting to kill me, in a fight for my life, I'd choose me." She started crying again. "Just go call the fucking popo to come get me. I ain't running." Derek turned her back to him and held her again. "Look me in the eyes and tell me you never murdered anyone because you wanted to." Ronnie quickly pulled away. Never! Yeah, I told people I'd kill them if they didn't pay what they owed, but that always scares them enough to make them pay. I would have never really hurt Primrose or Regal. She sighed. I did lots of things I ain't proud of, Derek. You're really thinking I can just change? Come work with you on your dad's farm? Stay here with you? Loving you? Being your honey? He caressed the side of her face. You can change if you wanna. It's really that easy. Derek knew he had his answer when she lowered herself and kissed him. Then they made love again. Primrose left her house, thinking whoever attacked her there before might come for her again. Possibly Ronnie. She didn't want to involve her parents any further than they already were. She left the gated community and went into downtown Strickfield. She knew she'd be okay with people and lights. She decided she would go to Roth's Rings, a 24-hour donut shop and video game arcade. She knew she would be safe there for sure. As she started to pass an alley, she saw someone leaning oddly against the wall. The shape looked feminine. "Hey! Are you all right?" Primrose called out. When the girl suddenly fell onto her back, Primrose ran into the alley to help. Upon reaching the girl, her hands went to her mouth as she screamed upon seeing the dead body of Regal Fairlane. There were 2 empty syringes right next to her. "Oh God, you fucking crazy bitch, Ronnie!" she yelled. Primrose turned and ran further into the alley when she suddenly found she didn't have her smartphone. She could get to the police station in minutes and be safe, so she soon turned down the connecting alley leading to the Strickfield Centennial Theater. Then she stopped when she remembered it was there that Samuel Wormton died. She sank to her knees and began to cry. "Primrose," a haunting, familiar voice sang. "Primrose." Primrose looked up and saw the glowing ghost of Lillian Johansson walking towards her. "No!" Primrose wailed as the ghost laughed horribly. She wanted to get up and run, but she was too exhausted with grief and weariness and petrified with fear as she held herself now. The ghost was soon right in front of her. "Didn't anyone ever teach you that it's wrong to do drugs, Primrose?" the ghost taunted her. "Regal just learned that lesson. Now it's time for you to learn too." The ghost produced a large, filled syringe in each hand. "Say no to drugs." Primrose's final scream was cut off when the ghost lowered herself and jammed the needles right into her neck. The last thing Primrose Mirren would ever feel were the lethal drugs squirting into her system. Primrose was dead before the syringes were even empty. The ghost finished emptying them before pulling them out and dropping them beside Primrose's corpse. Lillian Johansson laughed coldly and looked down at her body. "Death doesn't end here for you or Regal, dear. You two still have one final event you must attend before you can go to your graves." Well, I know I'm certainly dying, pardon the phrasing, to find out what happens, what's really going on at Strickfield High during the summer vacation. Is the killer truly the specter of a prom queen hopeful out for revenge, or is something more human and more diabolical going on? You'll have to come back next week to find out, as we have the thrilling conclusion of Prom Night of the Dead. But for now, you'll have to have a week of suspense, and I know that's truly terrifying. I do want to remind you, next Monday is Monthly Spooky, our 2-hour talk show, all about the spookier side of life, so make sure you check it out this Monday. Myself and Michelle will be talking all about some topics I have a feeling you'll truly enjoy. I have to be honest, as I'm recording this, I have been sick with a stomach flu for almost 5 days, so it's a miracle I got this show out, but I'm glad I could, because there's very little in life I love as much as doing the show, and that is not just some BS. I already have a job some people call a dream job. Well, this is a very much bonus to that. And speaking of, I want to say an extra special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who contribute $15 or more per month and get to hear their name on the show. And they are Bobbletopia.com, Megan Hua, Julia Kirsch, Brent McCullough, Gino Lyons, Steve King, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. If you want to join them, if you want to hear your name at the end of every program, just go to WeeklySpooky.com and click on Patreon. Make your pledge, and I'll be pleased to pronounce your name, hopefully, correctly every single week. But now, my friends, it's time for me to eat some chicken noodle soup and keep fighting this bug. But I hope you all are having a phenomenal week. I hope you're all as excited as I am to reach the conclusion of Prom Night of the Dead. But now I'm going to go lay down. So for myself, for my producer Dan Wilder, my executive producer Rob Fields, and our wonderful composer Ray Mattis, I will talk at you next time. And believe me, it's gonna be spooky.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.